Silver has been used for centuries for natural human health and has proven to be an effective alternative as a defense against germs, bruises, bacteria, and disease. Mycronic silver technology is superior to other silver products and is specially formulated to work with your immune system for an affordable, natural health choice. Check out mychronicsilver.net today and see why customers are choosing Mycronic Silver, fast-acting and reliable. That's mychronicsilver.net.
Hey, we're live. Oh my gosh, you never know when that's going to happen, right? You guys, welcome back to American Perspective this Friday with your host, Noél Roberts, Patriot Mom 007 here in Arizona. That was Mycronic Silver. You guys, we talk about it every week and been trying it for lots of different things. I want to remind you, Patriot Mom 007 will get you 10% off. This is their odorless, tasteless, colorless supplement. You just drink it right out of the bottle every day. And I actually gave to my son last night the spray. He had a little like, I don't know, kind of some kind of abrasion on his arm. Anyway, it's good for everything and doesn't burn when it goes on. He used it last night. He's using it now. It's in his room. So we'll see how quickly that helps him. But everybody who's used it has given me really great feedback. So check out Mycronic Silver. And then also Patriot Mom 007. I do want to mention NASA's hemp also will get you 10% off. And I mentioned last week, rncstore.com, John Richardson, cancer prevention, apricot seeds will get you 10% off. But then if you buy the bundle with the membership, it'll get you actually 30% off. So check those out today. Everything's in the descriptions at Patriot_Mom 007 on all the channels, Facebook, X. We are live today on YouTube and Rumble as well. And so hope to see you there. Give us your comments and feedback when you get a chance, but we're glad you're here today. And just want to welcome you to the show. It's going to be wonderful. We have a great guest. We're going to bring her on in just a little bit. You know, I like to do a couple stories. And today we are talking about kids. So there's lots of things happening. Actually, I just caught the news before we came on, and Mr. Garcia, the El Salvadorian illegal trafficker, is apparently set to be released from jail today. I didn't get the whole entire story, so we're going to have to follow that one and see what's going on. But apparently he's going to be let out into the general population of America. I have a feeling somebody's going to pick him up soon and hopefully deport him back, because he did have deportation orders previously, and we want to get all the traffickers out of our country, obviously, as quick as possible. So we're going to follow that story. But today I wanted to talk about our FBI Director, Kash Patel. They have been rounding up also a lot of child sex traffickers, and they have Operation Restore Justice that they've put together with Pam Bondi, our Attorney General. They have already arrested over 200 individuals involved in child sex operations across 55 FBI field offices, which they rescued of that 115 children. So we're going to hear from our FBI Director, Kash Patel, right now.
Our children. If you harm our children, you will be given no sanctuary. There is no place we will not come to hunt you down. There is no place we will not look for you. And there is no cage we will not put you in should you do harm to our children. The prioritization of this administration and General Bondi has made it abundantly clear to child predators: you will be hunted down and you will be prosecuted. And that is a refreshing thing to hear for the men and women who do this work tirelessly. And it's also an acknowledgement of the safety that we look forward to bringing America.
Hey, I think we might have froze there at the end, but you get the idea. They are going after the worst of the worst. And that is exactly what we voted for, is to try to get as many criminals, all of them, whatever they're doing. Of course, the human traffickers that go after the children also, but the murderers, rapists. I mean, it's a big job, and they are just going to continue that every day. But today, what we're going to be talking about, and I brought that up because we are going to be talking about children with our guest. And so I wanted to just highlight some of the positives that are going on in our country, because there's plenty of negatives still that we have to deal with. And the next story I brought up, I saw, and I honestly, I can't even believe this is happening in Illinois, but JB Pritzker over there, he's an interesting politician. I don't understand. Maybe he doesn't have kids or grandkids or know any kids. I'm not exactly sure how this would happen, that he would even allow anything of this nature to pass into law in his state, but he did sign it into law. It's a new bill he signed the other day. It will require public schools to offer age-appropriate screenings, annual psychiatric evaluations to identify mental health concerns for students from third grade all the way through 12th grade. And this is some of what we're going to be getting into today, because that is wholly ridiculous. Like, there's so many reasons, and I am not a psychiatrist or psychologist, but I have unfortunately had some dealings with this situation in our school districts when my kids were going through their schooling in public. And the point they say for these annual screenings is to ensure that well, okay, so I'm sorry, wait, that was actually a commentary I put up there. So it's being said that they want to basically drug our children, right? As early as possible with the psychoactive, psychotropic medications. And big pharma, of course, is such a proponent in our lives, and they want their hands in everything, and the earlier the better. And I did see this too in school with my kids, where they want to put all the kids on medications, and maybe it is like in conjunction with big pharma, but personally, I think it's really just their way to manage the kids. Either way, it's not great. And so we're going to hear from Dr. Tara Lynn, who opposes this radical and dangerous new law in Illinois. She is a doctor, so let's hear what she has to say.
Illinois just showed the entire country what not to do when it comes to mental health and our children. In case you're wondering, the state of Illinois just passed a law that is going to be screening all children in school districts ages 3rd grade to 12th grade about their mental health. Despite research showing, putting the research in the description, that universal screening can make matters worse and definitely doesn't improve outcomes. Here's what we know. Essentially, to catch more fish, you cast a bigger net. In that bigger net, you're going to catch fish that don't belong there. Most screening tools are developed by Big Pharma. Surprise. Who's going to implement these screening tools? Who's going to pressure parents what to do after the screening tool comes back? And by the way, most screening tools ask you to assess the last 2 weeks of your life. Is that before or after your boyfriend broke up with you? Is that before or after you're having trouble with friendships on the playground? Is that before or after you didn't perform the way you wanted to on a test? Is that before or after your parents told you that you couldn't go to somebody's house and you were grounded? It's going to pick up on things that are not even mental health related. It will pick up on things that are just human development related. Now, parents do have the option to opt out of this. And yeah, I hope most of them exercise that option, or what we're going to see is more and more medicated kids. I can't even believe this is 2025. If you guys want to get more involved in the unmedicating of our children, head on over to ablechild.org. We'll see you there.
Okay, so I thought that was really great to hear from a doctor who is not a proponent of this. There's just no good reason I can think to blanket test for mental health our kids starting in 3rd grade. Of course, if our parents see a problem at home or they're experiencing issues in school, then we could bring in professionals and maybe look at some screenings. But to just do it across the board annually, kids go through so many things pretty much every hour practically these days. I mean, it's not even every day or every month. Like, there's so many issues kids have to face on a hour-to-hour basis, in school, out of school, in sports, with their friend groups. I don't think that their testing mental health is going to be a very positive practice over here in Illinois. I'm not sure how long this is going to last. I hope that somebody gets on board, and I hope it doesn't start like wildfire, like all these other crazy things they bring up in the blue states, and then they start implementing them across the nation. So I hate to see that, because our kids are going to suffer for it. And sometimes when the adults are in charge, that doesn't always necessarily, it's not always a good thing. Sometimes these adults don't always have the kids' best interests at heart, even though they disguise it as such. And speaking of kids, so we're going to talk actually with our guest today, and she's got some information on a lot of this happening, the psychiatric side of things, just the Title IX things in school. I mean, school area issues are so prevalent and pervasive now. Give me 1 second on our freedom. And then there are so many issues in our schools from top to bottom, with the transgender, with the bathrooms, with the sports. I mean, kids are just so confused these days. So to throw this testing on top of it just seems a little ridiculous, since they've already put all these obstacles in front of the kids on purpose. But real quick, before we lead into that, we are going to hear from my school that I sit on the school board for, Freedom Academy Charter School here in AZ. It's freedomacademyaz.org. If you are looking to change schools for your kids K through 8, we have an amazing school. It is a smaller charter, and we do appreciate that because we have amazing teachers that work with our kids one-on-one in smaller classrooms, which is what we promote. It's a back to basics, non-woke school. We're very proud of that. We just put a parent pledge in place, actually. Our board just voted that in. And it's basically a pledge we are giving to our parents of how we'd like to help them raise, have their kids grow up successfully in our school, as well as what we're not going to allow, which is all of this nonsense and all of the issues that are brought to the children's doors these days that they just should not really be even hearing about, to tell you the truth. And so if you guys want to check out freedomacademyaz.org, I hope you will. And you can always reach me, DM me anywhere on any channel if you want information. Like I said, I am a board member. Happy to get you information if you're looking for the best charter school in North Phoenix. So Robert, let's see a little bit about what our school does with our kids. Perfect. Okay, great. So you can see Freedom Academy. That was our first day of school. We started July 31st. That was our president, Christy, in that beautiful dress. And our treasurer, that's James, our treasurer. I could not be there for our first day of school. I was so disappointed. We have an amazing principal we just brought on. And so we're really investing a lot of time and energy into this new school year. We're revamping a lot of our school to make it the best possible. And so freedomacademyaz.org, you guys, check it out today. Please DM me if you do have any questions. We'd love to see you, and we'd love to have your kids there to join us. So going back to our guest today, Anne, this video that we're going to check out next is let's see, an employee. Oh yeah, right. Okay, this is so when I'm looking around for things, it's funny what I find. It's surprising, really, but this is an employee at a child gender clinic who is admitting openly, publicly, I guess, whistleblowing, that children's mental health has worsened once they started the puberty blockers. This is another component that they've thrown at kids is, hey, you want to be a different gender? Well, let us give you drugs and we'll help you diminish who you are and promote what you think you want to be or what your parents think is good for you. And so again, parents are great, but sometimes parents don't always have the kids' best interests at heart. It's just really unfortunate that this is where we're at. But she is mentioning that the treatments harmed more kids than it helped, and that the workers where she was at were forbidden from expressing their concern for the safety of the children. So I want to hear from her, and then we're going to do a bio for Anne and bring her on.
Mental health was getting worse once they started the blocker. And that's against what the narrative tells us. The narrative says these interventions are supposed to make people better. We were pretty much putting anybody on testosterone at 13 and a half if that's what they wanted. It was getting to the point where we were harming more patients that we were helping, just by the numbers. What I am not in agreement with is this push to rapid medicalization of children. And it got to the point in the center where there was an actual directive that we were no longer allowed to use the phrase, "I have concerns about a patient." And in medicine, that should scare anyone.
Yeah, it should scare everyone, actually.
Mental health was getting worse once they started the block.
That's okay. That's okay. So yes, what she said at the end there, it should scare everyone. Now, this is an employee of an organization who dealt with giving children these blockers and the harm. And we have heard, so I also sit as co-chair for the Phoenix chapter of Independent Women's Network. And if you haven't heard of Riley Gaines or Paula Scanlon, they were working furiously the last couple of years to make sure Title IX is upheld for women in safe spaces and sports. And they talk all the time about what this has done, with the transgender community too, and the young kids who are put through these drug regimes to change who they are in basically their DNA. I mean, you can't do that to anyone and expect them to come out better on the other side, especially young kids who are still just developing everything, including their minds. So I'm excited to talk with Anne today because she's got all the information I think that I don't have in detail. And if you wondered what's going on, we're going to find out. So Anne Craft Taydus is a fierce champion for children and families in Virginia. As co-founder and vice president of Virginians for Children First, and founder of Parent Team 6, Anne leads the charge in protecting our kids and ensuring parents have a powerful voice in education. Known as the Virginia Warrior Mom, she's been instrumental in pushing for clearer, more accurate school curriculum standards, especially when it comes to teaching American history with honesty and depth. Anne regularly steps into the spotlight to empower parents, advocate for transparency, and hold schools accountable. Her work is all about putting families first and making sure education reflects the values and needs of real communities. We're excited to have her with us today to share her insights and inspire action across the board. So I hope you guys are listening. And if not, tune in later because we are here to welcome to American Perspective today, Anne Craft Taydus. Thank you for being here.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for your patience.
No problem. You just brought up a topic that I had to sit here and pray for a minute while you were talking because people have no idea how detrimental this is going to be to children. And it's been a passion of mine for 3 years, figuring out where it came from, how long it's been going on, what it's doing. And that's because it happened to my child. Right after COVID, because she got in 4th grade, my daughter was sent home, end of the school year. 5th grade, this is my oldest, she was home the whole year. She got sent back to school. They opened back up in 6th grade for a 6th grade girl who had been locked down and made to wear a mask. And she came home and this was a couple months in, and she said, "Mommy, I have generalized anxiety disorder and I need to see a therapist." And this is usually when I'm speaking in public, people laugh. But as a parent, that's not funny for an 11-year-old to come home and use that language, first of all. And then say, well, I said, and I'm intelligent enough and I had questioned everything. So I said, where did you get that language, first of all? And I said, you don't have anxiety. You're a 6th grade girl. And I was trying to tell her what you have is called stress. You have, and so when they tell parents, this is really big, is that they've been telling you for how long that they're teaching your children coping skills, right?
Yep.
It's the generation that has absolutely no coping skills. Everything is pathologized to them. That's right. And that's what we've done, is that it's almost hilarious to me because this happened in Virginia. over during our current administration. This was not under a blue state. This is under a red administration.
Right.
That we passed into law, so all of this, so social emotional learning, which is a behavior screener that came in already in all 50 states. You're already doing it, whether they're telling you or not, with the COVID money, ESSER money, all that money, that was all social emotional learning and behavior screeners. And so you're already doing it. And so what it does is it gives people this false sense of, oh, well, they just passed a law, so they're going to start it now. In my county, Chesterfield County in Virginia, we're the 4th largest behind Loudoun, Fairfax, and Prince William. We started in 2016. We started behavior screeners. 2016, it's not because of COVID.
Right.
And what this stuff is going to do is that when you become aware of how long that they've been doing it that you didn't know about, and then I'm sitting here looking at what the codified mental illnesses so your child's going to graduate with nervousness. Your child is now going to have a codified mental illness as nervousness, unhappiness, grief, prolonged grief. Like, is that auditory hallucinations? How are they finding all this stuff out? I'm actually looking at one of the behavior screeners, a parent in Chesterfield, schizophrenia. So a teacher, and keep in mind, these are teachers doing these because so here, K through 8, the teacher fills out a monthly behavior screener, and it's like strongly agree. And it's these benign questions like, does the child sit still? Do they get along well with others? How do you go from that to their likelihood of having schizophrenia or any kind of or obsessive compulsive disorder?
Yes.
And so when I talk to teachers, they talk about this stupid, they call it this stupid PBIS screener I have to do. And I said, do you even have any idea what that's doing? The teachers don't even know. They're not even training them appropriately of what they're filling out. So if they've had a bad day, that child made them angry, and it's the day that they have to fill it out, and their level of unhappiness with that child, they don't even know the consequences. And then you have the ones that do, who love it and think that it should be done. But what people have to look at is that we are talking about the medicalization of government education, 100%, meaning the process by which human conditions are made to be problems defined. So shyness, is that a medical condition? Nervousness. So now children aren't just nervous, but I said to my daughter, you didn't study for a test. You went in, the fear that you feel right now about failing that test, that does not mean you have an anxiety disorder. Right. It is something that every generation before you has learned from. So I learned that I don't ever want to feel this again. So I'm never going to not study for a test. I'm not going to say I feel this way because I have anxiety disorder. That's why these children are I call it the feral generation. Every single thing that they have right now is because they've been given a label.
Right.
It's not my fault that I feel this way right now. It's because I have this. I've been diagnosed with this. No, it's because you didn't study, but that you don't learn from your feelings. It's like bullying. It's always going to be there. So how long are we going to talk about we're going to get rid of bullying before we realize we're not really doing that? Because there's something called the treatment prevalence paradox, is that the more that we do, so the more mental health that we've been giving over the last 10 or 15 years, the worse the outcome has been. And it is a medical term. So if you gave somebody a medication or a treatment in the medical community, and the more you gave them, they started to decline, their health declined, then you would have a doctor or a physician or somebody to sit there with you and analyze your outcome and say, this isn't working. But we don't give children more of something that's making them worse. And that's why when you give a medical thing to teachers, who, by the way, aren't even qualified anymore to be teachers. Anybody in Virginia, you can be a felon. That was bipartisan unanimous, 2020.
I didn't know that.
There's a teacher shortage. So what do you do when you don't have enough teachers? You let anybody teach your children? Same thing with the mental health. They're now called paraprofessionals. You can take
Yes.
like a 1 hour course and now you're suddenly a psychologist. Is that Parkland? It's like, if you've never read, there's a book, I'll remember the name if anybody out there remembers what, Why Meadow Died. Is that they analyzed all of the data from the Parkland shooter, is that that should have never happened, because the amount of mental health data that they're collecting on these children is that they had enough red flags, is that there's Uvalde, is that they're trying to, you have to get the parents access using FERPA, which is a
Right.
federal law.
Yep. Familiar.
And is that you, and they accessed it, and that there's enough, is that that should have never happened. And so when you give universal mental health care, and they're already doing it, you can look up the MTSS, or in your state, like for us, it's the VTSS, the multi-tiered system, is that, or Virginia tiered system of instruction, and it's a triangle, and you'll see, and 80% of the triangle will be green. That's universal. They're giving universal mental health. And then this much is yellow, and the tiny tip is red. So you're either tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. They've been giving universal mental health for years. They might call it 18 different things: restorative care, trauma-informed care, PBIS, RTI, all of this stuff started on as special education. The majority of it did. But Barack Obama, here's the zinger, he made Title I all children at risk, and all IDEA, that would be special education,
Right.
is that apply both of those. And this is how you get on the side of the people who think that they're Democrats, because there's no centrist Democrats anymore, is that you start talking to them about how your Title I, you said, why aren't the Democrats telling you that they signed a bill to where Title I money goes to all children? Because Barack Obama could not bring in all this mental health stuff in the future unless he made all children at risk.
Yep.
And so and that's how all of this, Barack Obama did it. When Every Student Succeeds Act was signed, everybody thought No Child Left Behind went away when the teachers unions started talking about it. No, the teachers unions weren't held accountable anymore, which is what No Child Left Behind did. That's why they were mad. Barack Obama signed it. Your state has Every Student Succeeds Act. Is that it's 100, and it's been in place since then, and it's collecting so much data. And this is what, when I speak and I have people who are like, oh, I don't care about education. I'll go speak to a whole room of gun people, 2As, because what this is going to do, if they were to throw a red flag law right now, you have about 9 or 10 years, almost an entire decade of children who will never get a gun.
Right.
Because right now they're asking if you've ever been diagnosed in Virginia with a mental illness when you apply to get a gun. And so if your education record, which sits 75 years post-graduation, so we're talking about generational.
Wow.
One of the ones that they use is the BASC3. That's the same one China uses for their emotional quotient, their social credit score.
Wow, I did not know that. I mean, these are some of these things that you're telling me now. I mean, so we had, of course, social emotional learning here in Arizona was real big when my youngest son and was going into his freshman year. My kids are now 20 and 23. I'm so glad they've aged out of the public school system. Like, who would ever think you'd thank God that they're not in public school, but we do. And we didn't know social emotional learning. Like, I mean, because he was he was a boy. I don't think it would hit them as much, although he was in that system with the ADD, ADHD designations, both my sons. And so they brought us in, I think for him, it was second grade or third grade, and had to sit down and said, he needs to go on some kind of medication. And then this SEL.
They want children. It's so aggravating, because
it is.
Imagine putting a second grader in front of a computer, because we don't have books here. We haven't had books in
It's all Chromebooks.
years.
Yeah, it's all.
We have
tablets.
kindergartners learning to read on Chromebooks.
Yeah, I can't stand that. That's
8 hours and 8 hours a day with
Yep.
one 15-minute recess. As And then if you get collectively punished, they'll take away your recess. And then and then after that, they'll make you have silent lunch. So imagine being a 6, 7, 8-year-old child, especially a boy, because boys
gotta
get
run
targeted
around.
worse than girls, right? Is that you have to sit still in front of a computer, and then they call your parents because they're acting like children. These are children, is what I continue to tell people.
Yes.
Is that you're holding these children to an account that no adult is held to. Sit still. I mean,
At your
it's
desk all
absolutely,
day.
yeah, sit there, be
Yeah.
quiet, sit down, shut up. It is that, and they have this energy and that's what makes them beautiful. That's what makes them children. And we're sending them into a burning house every day. And it is that there's no other way around it, is that when your children come home broken, like, is that I watched my daughter for years. What did I do wrong? Well, I found out that she'd been bullied for years. The school had never told me. And then we got locked down on COVID. And at this point, my girls are 7 years apart. So I've got a 2-year-old during COVID. And I'm looking at my 4th grader going, what did I do wrong?
Right.
And that's what parents do, is they automatically go to, because who do they automatically blame?
Yeah,
Parents.
it's us. Well, yeah, I mean, and it does fall to us to know what's going on. I mean,
It
my
does.
sons had we had divorce, so they were already
Right.
traumatized, and they were young, 2 and 5 at the time, and then going into the schools, and then they pinpoint them. My younger son, who couldn't sit in his desk with, extra energy, and we did get behind it as far as I needed to help him manage, and we found alternative ways. And our teachers, those teachers in grade school, I will say, were great. When he got into high school, that's when I saw a bigger problem. The teachers in grade school seemed to want to work with the kids a little bit more, at least the ones who cared, the caring teachers, the teachers we grew up with.
In
They just
elementary
still,
school,
yeah.
because my sister teaches like first,
Mhm.
second, third in the county I live in, she's like, well, we're not doing that. And I said, well, let me look. Is that the elementaries, they don't know that the tiny, like the foundation they're laying for the middle school and high school, like
Right.
especially middle school, which is when you get hit hard with
Yes,
it.
that's
Sixth
where they're
grade,
really buckling down on
sixth
that.
grade, they're gonna opiate suicide, like like your children, and like to
Yes.
what degree do you think it's appropriate for, or what your white privilege over black, I mean, is that's when they are going to hit you at 8th grade civics, they're going to hit you hard.
Yes,
Is
they
that
did.
elementary school, like my sister was horrified when I explained to her what the little groundwork that she was laying was
Right.
doing.
With the
And it
programming and with the curriculum, especially that they sneak in, and parents, because we're not even allowed to be in the classrooms anymore. They prohibit you by grade school, middle school. You can't even go past the glass at
No.
the front desk. You can't go to class. You can't see what they're doing. The
So you're
kids are
sending your child into a prison, is what I tell. It's
you are, and kids don't really reveal what's going on just because they're kids. And when you say, "Hey, what was your school day like?" They're not very forthcoming because they're kids, and so it's really hard to decipher as parents what is happening. It's so important. And whoever's watching this, if you do have kids, school age kids still in school, I mean, I just encourage you. And I know that the awareness has been heightened after COVID. Thank God. I guess that was one positive that came out of that, was that parents really started looking at things and looking at the curriculum. And that's, the school that I brought up earlier, Freedom Academy. I mean, we're very clear and transparent. And we've actually sought out for the new executive order that we are, in over compliance because we want to be, but it's a great opportunity for schools who would like to be in compliance with pro kid curricula and not pro pharma or pro SEL or pro transgender, to make the switch and just follow the law in place now, which is just kind of an opportunity for that to happen. But I wanted to ask you, with your daughter, so when this is happening, I mean, how do you address, I'm curious to get to the point, because you're such an advocate. I saw a lot of some of your YouTubes and you at the school board meetings, and you're very loud voice. It's great. Not everybody can get up behind the podium at a school board meeting, even in that setting, and
no.
voice their concern. So I want you to share with parents, how that looked for your family and what steps you were able to take, so that maybe it
Yeah.
gives them some ideas of what they can do to help their child if this is happening.
So you're right, is that technology has made, we don't get paper home anymore. textbooks are a guideline. You knew what every child was learning, and every child got a book and a parent could look through it. You got papers that came home. So technology has been our worst enemy. And navigating how you look at a curriculum, even if you know to go look at it, you still don't know how that's translating into the classroom. But so in my situation, I said, hold up. So I called the principal and I said, what is this language? And he gave me some. So I started reading the Virginia Code. I went to the education section and I started reading. And I saw the Virginia Code. Okay, I have the right to request my child's curriculum and teacher training materials under the Federal Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment. So then and that's where our website has Know Your Rights. It's got all this stuff, which is an OCR violation. You can go, at least go state, if they tell you, so you have the right, whether it's in your state code or not, to request your child's curriculum and teacher training materials and opt them out of stuff you challenge. And so I've had so many parents do this, and the schools tell them, oh no, we can't do that because of technology. And this is, people say, and what would you do here? Well, here's what I would do, which is like you see when I talk to the school board or the Senate. I read porn to the Senate last year. I don't like, this was in our high school.
I heard you read that book. Oh my gosh, that was.
Yeah. And that was a liberal love porn in school Senate. And I opened it up to, if you're going to talk about doing this to things with pictures in our high schools, then I'm gonna read it to you. And this is funny. I carry my karaoke mic with me. Don't turn my mic off either, because I don't play. Like, you can drag me. Yeah, I do.
Good for you.
See, I've been clean 16 years. I say I've been to jail for the wrong reasons. I will sit in jail for the right reasons, and that's my children. And because what's happening to these children is criminal. In another era, this never would have been. This is that you can read 80, 90, 1960, 1970. This people were fighting, that people were flying across the United States to go to DC to fight this stuff.
And tell me about that, because you mentioned that off air before we started about the history of this in the parties. And I think people don't even realize where we were, where we've come, and how this has evolved to get to this point, which is just so detrimental. Everybody wants to help the kids, they say, but ultimately, when we heard from these two professionals and this doctor on the clips I shared, that this is from an organizational, worker, this is detrimental beyond belief. And like you said, generationally, because when you start these kids in third grade down this path, their whole lives are going to be different as adults. And then when they have kids, then they're raising those kids, and they've almost lulled a whole generation into thinking that this is okay to do to the kids. So then they will do that to their generation as well.
Well, so my generation, I'm 45. And so I was raised, I'm that like micro generation they call the Oregon Trail, like right before 80 to so is it my generation, anybody younger than me, it's very hard. My friends are all like 70 and 80-year-old patriots, because having this conversation, I was raised in the generation where you went to therapy for everything. Right. So, and we read parent self-help books and be soft to your kids and, sit down and get at their level. And so we have been groomed to be the parent that accept this. When a child comes home and says, I have generalized anxiety disorder, it's completely normal to my generation and younger. And that's the problem, is getting the mindset of, okay, I was groomed in a manner to accept this because I was told to go to therapy for everything. Now, I'm the case with being 16 years clean. I needed a lot of therapy for a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that you go to therapy for if your nose hurts, or, is that if you feel like crying because you're watching Lifetime, is that we've been taught that, like, our generation. And so now we're at the place where kids are coming home and we're okay, let's go put them on meds, because society, mainstream media, and people always want to demonize the teachers unions. The scary people are the School Psychologists Association, the Counselors Association. You want to talk about scary? you talk about like child sex trafficking, you got to talk about CPS, and you got to talk about having social workers in school.
CPS, and I've actually, unfortunately for our family, we were also involved with that organization, and there's a lot of proponents here in Arizona that are trying to expose our department. I love the name Department of Child Safety, which is like a total contrary to
Ours is
what they do.
Department of Family Services, tearing
Yeah.
family apart services is what they
Yeah,
do. Like,
they are the biggest criminals of all, and what they do to the kids and what they put in their minds when they're going through services, court ordered typically is, I couldn't even believe it. It's criminal. There's no way. They lie
it
on
is, but the
reports. The
thing is,
supervisors
yep,
don't follow through. They don't do their job. They minimize, if you do what you're supposed to as a parent, there are supervisors that will minimize that for their own whatever gain. I don't understand why they would do that, but I saw it happen. I actually saw reports changed. I saw things
yep.
not accurate. I saw lies in reports. But there's no one to go to as a parent, and you're just kind of freewheeling it. Really, these days they're throwing so much not just at the kids but the parents. And so, I want to talk about your organization too. We have it up on the screen. It's pt6.org, Parent Team 6. And I highly suggest you guys get on Facebook too and find Anne. It's down there. Her name is down there for her username. You can find her on Facebook as well and reach out to her, because these are really big, these are big issues that it's hard to navigate as parents. And when you're the parent and it's your child, not all parents go around to the other parents and say, oh, this is happening to my kid, or they put them on this, or they want to test them. Because sometimes parents want to keep that, private for their kids or them, or families feel uncomfortable, or some feel ashamed in this environment of mental health. And so I want you to talk about your organization, and also how people, if you have resources, I love to get the resources out. So let's go down that path a little bit so we can get that information out. It's so important.
Yes, thank you for pulling up all my social. So my name is that my Facebook is public. People hate it, like, and tell when I'm being gang stalked, because you can't comment unless you're my friend. And I do lives in the like, and I give you the straight up truth. And I speak across the state. I actually took a break from doing shows up until now for a while, but it gets exhausting. But Virginians for Children First is our 501c4. That's a great place to go. It has Know Your Rights. There's a place, it has opt-outs, data collection, that what you like federally, your school boards should be required, at least annually, you must be notified of that they're not.
Right.
I mean, this is legislation that was carried by 2 senators and 7 delegates 2 years ago, and it was called Transparency in Education. I had to write a bill with all the state codes and federal law that school boards had to follow that they're not following. And I think writing a bill that you have to follow the law is ridiculous, but I did it as a point. And then I went in front of our governor a year ago talking about this and asking him just to get it on video. And if to school boards, parents matter, right? Okay, who's going to enforce that the school boards aren't following state code or federal law?
The enforcement's the biggest problem.
It's the biggest problem, and is because none of them are. And the Senate sent it back that, well, this is redundant, but the Board of Education they had to issue a letter to do an investigation. That still hasn't been done. Our General Assembly it's assigned so that still hasn't been done.
And how is it that people, so when this is happening, so you're so involved legislatively, as I am a precinct committeeman, and I work in that area. So I kind of see behind the scenes what the breakdowns are and what the slowness is, or just the halting, and they just don't do things.
Right.
Sometimes. How do people get to the point like you to get things to happen? What does that look like in real time for parents who want to try to fix things?
So for me, I started going where they were. I started, and it helped a lot traveling and starting to work in different parts of the state, because I worked at 66 of our divisions, and we have like 121. So I've worked in half of our divisions.
Wow.
Or counties, cities. And so it's looking at voter history, if especially if they've been there a while, and if they're actually like a Republican or a rhino, or they need to be just go ahead and kick to the left.
Right.
And the ones that are voting sanely no on lunacy, okay, that's somebody I need to go to, because the rest of them are probably in on it. I call it the stupid versus swamp swimming. You kind of feel out who's genuinely needs to know information and who's going to go, and just keep swimming in the swamp.
Right.
And so those are the people that I went to carry legislation. And the rest of the people, I'm like, they know, like I walked into our state central committee meeting last week and the whole room was like, is that I care about America and our children over anything else, over the survival of our constitutional republic. And if you're sitting on one side or the other and you're violating anything constitutional, but especially when it comes to our tiny, innocent human beings, you go on my list. And there's a lot of delegates or whatnot that have come to me and said, and I don't want to go on your list. That I've been told when I vote, I think about, is she going to come back in backlash? Yes, accountability is what they are missing.
That's right.
They are missing they have been allowed to vote with the left, because that's what happens, is that the majority of education legislation passed is bipartisan, unanimous.
Yep.
You just hear about like the 10%. If there was a Venn diagram that's on like the slivers of the culture stuff, like the transgender policy, you just hear about like the stuff the news wants you to hear about. The rest of it, and what I tell people is, how do you come to a common ground with people who want to murder all of our babies, chop off your child's genitalia, give them pornography? Where is there a middle ground with these people?
There is, there
How
is
are
no
you?
middle ground.
No,
It's
is that
all
it's
extreme. Everything. That's what I'm saying. When I was talking at the top, it's like, it's not just the social emotional learning, the curriculum. It's the now we just had the other day, 2 kids that were suspended. They had that video in the bathroom. I forget the state, of the girl who was a boy, because I was so hard to keep track. And she was in the boys' bathroom, in the locker room, and the boys videotaped it. And I feel like they may have given her a hard time. But these are, again, they're kids. Like, they're not prepared to deal with other genders in their bathroom. They've been told their whole lives, that that's not okay, that you do not
right.
intermingle the sexes at that age or in spaces like that. And they got suspended, then it got overturned, because, we're starting to be aware.
If you want to play, okay, so if that girl wants to be a boy, then you treat that. It's no different than boys bullying. You don't get special treatment.
That's right.
Because, so do you want to be treated as a male or not? Is that you don't get to pick and choose. And that's where we've come to, is that bullying, when they talk, you need to start asking whom. There's a zero tolerance bullying for whom, because we've created protected classes. And every state, if you look up your bullying definition, I'm guessing it reads something like, there must be a power imbalance or a perceived power imbalance. That's why all of this bullying that's happening that parents aren't finding out about and that you're not hearing about, is the CDC in 2004 forced a definition into all, I think every state I've looked at, if you look at your bullying. And so the question becomes, what is that power imbalance, and who's perceiving the power imbalance?
Exactly. Who's evaluating is the biggest problem, isn't it? Because that's all subjective. I mean, everything's subjective, and the courts are subjective, we've seen.
Right.
And like you said, the teachers who do the evaluations to the starting point, they've been handed this task. They're not qualified. They're untrained. They could have had a bad day. Their own child could have upset them in the morning, and they're supposed to do a reasonable evaluation on a piece of paper with no skills or qualifications or background or education whatsoever, and then bring this to the psychiatrist or psychologist of the schools that they're bringing in, which are really tied to the agencies. A lot of DCS organizations
so
have
social workers, the majority, all this new stuff that they're bringing in, the social workers are going to be doing that, which should be frightening enough, is that if you live in an anonymous reporting state, and so like you said, if you're 7-year-old, if I do too. But the great thing about that, I will say this, is that the amount of teachers raping children that is getting away with like misdemeanor consensual sex with a 14-year-old if you're like the state of Virginia. I mean, I report on everyone that comes up. No child, because our age of consent is 13, no teacher has ever been, meaning if you're over 13, you can consent to sex with an adult.
What? Oh,
Yes.
wait a minute. Is that Virginia? What happened to 18? Is this not?
No, that's like the myth is that, oh, our age of consent is 18. Okay, so
Well,
tell
they
me
can't
this.
drink. I mean, so just for sex, they can opt in at
Yes.
13?
Yes.
And this is a
If,
law, an actual law.
yes, if you
Wow.
are, it's like if you are 13, is that yes, you can, the only time it is now, granted, if you are a custodian or a guardian, which is what they are when you put them on that bus, because in loco parentis, so they stand as a custodian or guardian, it is automatically a class 6 felony, but nobody's getting charged with that. So you talk about
That's
if they're charged or reported to CPS, and that's the only time the anonymous. So you don't have to wait if you hear or see something happening with another child, call and they have their mandate. They have to investigate it.
right.
But they're reporting on us. So if they said one big question they're always asking is, do you have a supportive parent or a supportive adult? Is one of those benign looking questions that should make alarm bells go off. Is because then you'll find that, well, I'll be your safe place.
Yes.
I'll be your supportive adult. And that's when you get into the grooming behavior.
That's right.
So you can talk, what, it's like the teachers that have the signs that say, what happens in circle stays in circle. Like, that's when it gets really scary as a child sex abuse survivor, is that if that's what's being promoted, then you need to let them know that there's nothing in that classroom that my child should say that you should ever think is your business to keep private.
No, and I had a big problem with that when we were with those agencies, is they're all about the secrecy. The parents can't know anything, even though they're under 18, and you're the one who should be guiding them. And in the counseling, you're supposed to step out and let them talk to them and coach them and do whatever they want. And you don't even know what your kid's being taught, let alone, told to convey to other organizational, supervisors or leaders or caseworkers. And that's where they really get you, is they lock the parents out. And so I would say, and I'm sure you back me up on this, is for any parents going through this, which this is still a really prevalent problem around the nation. All these organizations are kind of rogue and nobody's really putting them in check. I hope that this administration, maybe they look into that next. That I know they have a lot on their plate, but get involved and find out what's happening, what your kids are being told. And then if you do need to make a change, public schools can be good if the teachers are good and it's a good environment. I'm not saying public schools are bad. I grew up in our public schools were amazing, K through 12, amazing. All our teachers were great, but that day is kind of past. And what the teachers are being taught, and like you said, they're not always fully qualified teachers because of the shortages. They minimize the requirements for them. And so I would just say, look at alternatives, look at charters, smaller schools. Homeschool is very big here in Arizona. Of course, it was wildfire after COVID across the nation. And so I know plenty of moms who have homeschool that they actually teach the other kids, or they have their little groups, of homeschoolers. And so I would just say, don't always think you have to stay where you are with your children. And, you might need to make a kind of a drastic change. It's hard to make those changes. But when you think about what the long-term damage is to your child, it's really not that big of a change at all at that point.
It's not. And, the way that I've started to put it is that we have and I'm glad to come back on and tell you the origins of government schooling in our free nation, is that in 4,000 years of human history, government schooling has been around for 100. And in 1930, 90% of urban Blacks were fully literate. We now have 45 million adults who cannot read over the age of 5th grade. We've got the most illiterate, mentally unhealthy. Can you think about grandparents who lived through the Great Depression, 2 world wars, and then they're going to tell you they're teaching your children resilience? That was resilience. It's not a hard leap, and this is the whole history portion, to look at when we started government compulsory education versus where we are now and the origins. I have a book from 1869 that compares the southern states to the northern states who were compulsory and southern states still parent led, that compared the suicide rates, the crime rates. From 1869, a man wrote a book comparing compulsory education, and it's staggering back then. And then all of a sudden we have to remember that we are not a people that, because the world is doing it now, guess what? The world looks to us, and guess who started doing it first? We did. So if we have created a global problem,
Right.
and we are a one income house. My husband came home from overseas. He's a prior service Marine Corps.
Oh,
Is
my
that
kids
we are
are
a
Marines.
one income house from a grunt Marine, but my husband works his butt off, and we will never retire. Is that our children? Is that, but we live paycheck to paycheck. But that's what after fighting them 1 year, my daughter came out. She went into 7th grade in a private school, which you have to vet also. My youngest
Yes.
went to kindergarten, never having been touched by government schools. Middle of 7th grade, I saw this light come on in my child. She was laughing. She had friends, and it was the child. And I knew, and all I did was take her out of an environment. Is if you have to sell your house, sell your car, is that being a parent is about being selfless, not selfish. And is that it is not a child's job to bear the weight of the responsibility because you don't want to be uncomfortable. You don't want to have to give up something that makes your life a luxury. And people get kind of angry when I say that, but is that you really have to question why you brought these tiny, beautiful humans into this world. And was it to send them to the government? And if the government is hurting them, you got to stop sending them to the government. And if that means sacrificing, because there is a way, like the one-room schoolhouse is something I'm working on here in Virginia, is where you have to take it back to the community.
Right.
And so for the single mothers, the people who can't afford but to send their kids off, is that the community comes together and they build essentially like a one-room schoolhouse. And it's kind of like micro schooling, that kind of idea.
Mhm.
You get back to classical education, and you give parents who don't have the financial means to take them out the hope of being able to. And that's when you really get the beauty of the community coming back together, which is where we've been ripped apart.
And that's, I think, what we need to focus on too, is letting people know it's okay to talk to other parents like we used to. Parents used to be so close. We had groups of parents. It wasn't just PTO, but families got together, and they've segregated us so greatly now that it's hard to recapture that sense of community. But I'm a big proponent of community, and I talk about it all the time. If you don't work within each other's zones, right? You go live next to each other. You have to know who your neighbors are for various reasons. Water breaks, the whatever, mailman needs to drop, whatever, who knows? It could be a cup of sugar. I mean, that's a thing. So it's really important to get that community value and sense back, because when the kids are going through things and they know each other in school and they're in school, the parents also need to understand what's happening. So I encourage everybody not only just to do that, but also to hop on the websites we've talked about today, get in touch with Anne and ask your questions. You could DM her.
Because it doesn't matter what state you're like. People call me from different states, from different shows, and I will walk them through. I mean, this is what I do all day, and not shows, but talk to parents, like strategize, whether it's my state or not. I'll look up your state laws and tell you what to do. But what it comes down to is parental rights are constitutionally protected.
Right.
100%. And until we get back to how do you fight that, the same, like, is that deprivation of rights, and we have to go to the Supreme Court is what it's going to take for them to because they'll sue over everything.
Exactly.
And until we get together and stop saying, well, we're not going to win anyway. We're not going to win until we try. And if we try enough times, we will make a point. And that will require us coming together. But please don't sit at home and have that mentality of, well, I turned out okay, and don't wait for it to happen to your child, because I wish that I had known before I had to watch my child be almost broken. And then have to, but now she's a beautiful 15-year-old in 10th grade and is just vibrant. And all I did was take her out. Is that be involved, and don't let technology be the excuse of why you're not involved, because the law federally says you can be. So
that's right.
Is it because you have to want to be involved, because they're not going to tell you what you don't ask.
That's right. So I think those are really powerful words. And if anybody hears anything from this show, I think that last recap is the way to go. We're kind of out of time. So I know this is a really broad subject, and I dealt with it for many, many 8 years, at least in school. My kids, thank God, came out okay, but it was a chore. And so we really want to educate parents on the front side. Like Anne said, figure out what's going on at the beginning now that they're starting so young. I encourage everyone to just really try to get involved, ask for the curriculum, talk to the teachers, email your teachers. Don't be a silent parent. That's just death for your kids. And, look up Anne. We have the website up there. Go to my descriptions, Patriot_Mom007 on all the channels. It's on X, it's PMom007, but it's Patriot_Mom007 on everything else. If you didn't catch us today at noon on your lunchtime, we always encourage you to watch back, find the resources within the descriptions or the show, and then share them out, because really doing this, I'm not doing it for myself. I mean, I got my kids through it, but I do want to bring resources because people are still challenged with these issues every single day, and we don't want a whole generation, like Anne said, and I've got 10 years on you, Anne, so I'm in that next phase.
And
but
thank you for still doing it, even though yours are out, because that's what I hear a lot is, I'm glad mine aren't in it. And I'm like, well, I got mine out, and I'm fighting for 3.5 million children I didn't give birth to in the state of Virginia. So
it's exactly
because it's the fate of the nation is really what we're looking at.
And that's why I sit on the school board. I couldn't do school board. I was a single mom for 20 years. I was doing sports and jobs, and I couldn't do the parent activity stuff. But now, when my kids aged out, I wanted to help other kids and other parents and try to shape an area of our little world here in Phoenix to turn out amazing, successful, healthy, mentally healthy kids, emotionally healthy kids. So that's also why I stay in it.
That's awesome.
But and I want to thank you so much for being here. You're welcome to mute and hang out in the back while I just wrap up, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Thanks for having me. All right, bye-bye.
Thank you. So you guys, this is still going on. I know they don't talk about it all the time. It's not top of the news. It's not all, we have so much issues happening with all the illegals now, all the crime. They're trying to clean up so many areas of our nation, but the children are still a problem, and they're still being dealt the worst hand by the adults in so many cases, but the agencies especially, and pharma. And we really need to still continue to pay attention and try to stop this generationally, like Anne brought up. It couldn't be more important of an issue, to tell you the truth. And so we'll keep talking about it as long as I have kids, because my kids are going to have kids one day, and I want to make sure that it's better, way better by the time that happens, because it is certainly not there yet. But let's go, you guys. We're getting ready to wrap the show on this Friday. I hope you're having a great Friday so far, midday for some of you still at work, just probably ending your lunch hour if you're with us. And we're going to hear, as always, from Carolyn Levitt. She does our MAGA Minute wrap up. It's been another busy week. I mean, there is I don't even think she can put everything in her MAGA Minute. I don't know how long it is today, but we've got DC is getting a big revamp. If you didn't know, they're cleaning up the streets with our National Guard. And yesterday I saw some people taking pictures in front of the Washington Monument with the National Guard. And so people are starting to embrace that extra law enforcement efforts there in their area. I'm a big law enforcement proponent. I would love to see law enforcement on every corner of America, frankly. I've been overseas, and when you see them, armed guards in the streets, let me just tell you, nobody's pickpocketing anybody. That's just not happening. Nobody's getting jumped in the street either, because those guards are there and the law enforcement's there to keep them safe. So that's happening. We had, of course, money, economic wise, things, people say it's volatile, but we are holding steady. Jobs are increasing. Small businesses are doing better. And they put no tariffs on gold. So I didn't know that happened, but my kids happen to be in the gold and silver industry. So that sounds like a good deal for them, because that's their business. And of course, he had a historic summit in Alaska. He had Putin join him in talks this week with Zelensky. Was a big deal. I don't know if she's going to talk about that, but let's hear what Carolyn has to say on all the happenings.
It was another busy week here at the White House, delivering results for you, the American people. Let's dive into how we made America great again this week with another MAGA Minute. The president implemented a federal takeover of Washington, D.C. to restore law and order following years of out-of-control crime that has already yielded more than 100 arrests for firearm offenses, narcotics, assaults, and homicides. President Trump visited the Kennedy Center, where he delivered remarks and unveiled the 2025 Kennedy Center Honors nominees. John Deere, Ford, GE, and AbbVie announced billions of dollars of new investments in the United States, and small business sentiment reached a 5-month high this month. The July inflation report came in below expectations, with real wages having risen every single month since President Trump took office. That means more money in your pocket. The president announced that there will be no tariffs on gold. 110,000 Americans have applied for jobs at ICE since it began its recruiting effort. And if you're interested, check out join.ice.gov for more info. Pending claims at the Department of Veteran Affairs are now down 37% since President Trump took office, because our nation's veterans deserve better. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard declassified more documents exposing the Russia hoax, and former DNI James Clapper, who abused his office in historic fashion. And in addition, FBI Director Kash Patel revealed that disgraced Senator Adam Schiff leaked classified intelligence to shape political narratives in his attempt to hurt President Trump. The president is now on his way to Alaska for a historic bilateral meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in the hopes of ending this brutal war, and he will keep you posted on how that goes. I know you're not tired of winning yet, and neither are we. Make sure you tune in for more updates on next week's MAGA Minute.
All right, guys, so it's been a big win overall for our country. I did see today that John Bolton's house was raided by the FBI, so I'm sure we're going to hear more about what he was up to in those years, maybe subversively working against our president as well with Clapper and that crew. It's going to be interesting to unfold what they're going to probably be learning here in the next few months. I would suspect before the end of the year, we'll all hear more about it. So stay tuned for that. But also, thank you for tuning in today to American Perspective this afternoon with your host, me, Noél Roberts, Patriot Mom 007 here in Arizona. It's a beautiful weekend. I always want to thank Robert Johnson. He's in the back over in California with JData17 on Facebook and X. Please check out his channels. He does all the live streaming around the country and all the government organizations, agencies in your area, a lot in California. You can hear what's happening with your school board, with your law enforcement organizations, your utility boards, and it's all unedited, uncut, live stream. So you get it firsthand information and as it happens. So check him out. And also want to thank our guest, Anne Taydus, for joining us today. And thank you to Book It CJ and Amy over there. She's always great to work with and brings us amazing guests. So we always want to thank them for working with us here. You can find all the descriptions in my links over on all my channels at Patriot_Mom007. Please follow, like, and share. I always say, if you don't want to follow and you don't like, just share. I mean, just share, just hit the share button, because you just don't know who else could use the information. And so we really would like to provide great resources for people all over the country who may not have heard of Anne, who don't have the resources to get the help they need as a parent these days with what's happening with their children. And we just want to help provide some of that assistance if we can. And I always say, like I told Anne, you got to get involved, get educated. It's about the community and the challenges that you want to overcome in your community to help your neighbors, of course, your family, your friends, but also you've got your county, your city, your states, and federally, although we're not at the federal level, it does all work hand in hand. If you do it here locally, it does expand out. And so local impact, as General Flynn likes to say, equals national impact. And that could not be more true these days. It takes a village. Local action equals national impact. Thank you, Robert. What did I say? Not that. I did not say that, but you know what I mean. It takes a village, okay? Not just the village. It takes the whole village in the nation to make it run as great as possible. So elections are around the corner. We touched on that with Anne as well. The legislative bodies are very important in your states and your counties, and you need to know who is in them and who you're voting in. So don't rely just on what you hear. Things are coming up in 26. We've got some very important races around the nation. Democratic Socialists / communists are trying to get into to offices around the country. We want to make sure we know that that's happening, and then talk to your neighbors, educate them. Don't just tell them what to do. Put some information in front of them so that they can become educated going forward. It really makes a difference if they know what's happening in their area. Next week, you guys, we're going to have Billy Harfosh here. He's the host of Show Up Arizona. He's a good friend of mine. We've done some things together around town over the years. And so I'm looking forward to having him. I think he's coming in studio if he can make it over here. So that'll be fun. He actually has talked to some amazing cabinet members recently. We're going to hear about that and what he's up to here in Arizona. Other than that, I just want to wish everyone a really happy weekend ahead with family, friends, whatever you're doing, relaxing, just catching up on the work week. And we always look forward to seeing you guys back here again on American Perspective on Fridays at noon Pacific and Mountain Standard, 3 o'clock Eastern. And with that, you guys, we'll see you next Friday. And Robert, if you could take us out, that'd be great.